Many's the night I stayed up, my eyes open, my mouth open, just reading about your escapades.
They're all lies, you know.
It is interesting the many ways you and I overlap. You're the youngest of 3 James boys, and I'm the youngest of 5 Ford boys. You have blue eyes, I have blue eyes. You're 5 feet 8 inches tall, I'm 5 feet 8 inches tall. I honestly believe I'm destined for great things, Mr. James.
You give me signs that make me wonder. Can't figure it out. Do you want to be like me, or you want to be me?
He's just a human being. I know I won't get this one opportunity, and you can bet your life I'm not going to spoil it.
Seems to me, if you have something to confess, you spit it out now.
All right, that was a really great trailer, wasn't it? I, for one, cannot wait for that film. So, all right, welcome back to the channel. My name is Mr. Moneymaking Eric P, oddly trending from an east-west direction. And today we're going to discuss the Model Y and the ONVO L60, the ONVO, the sub-brand from NIO, of course. Now, if you don't know why we're comparing the ONVO L60 and the Model Y, well, that's because just recently, ONVO did their brand launch, and they also launched their first car, the L60, and much of their presentation was squarely aimed at the Model Y. They discussed all the ways they're better than the Model Y. They want to take down the king. And like I said, the Model Y is the king. They've been the undisputed king, basically, of the higher end, upper end of the electric car segment in China for the past couple of years. Of course, as the king, everybody is going to be gunning for that crown. And despite, quite a few, I would say, worthy competitors over the past year or two here in China, they really haven't made much of a huge dent in the sales of the Model Y. Let's take a look at some of the sales numbers. In the past half year, for all fully electric cars in China with a selling price over 200,000 RMB, the Model Y is head and shoulders above the rest. Now, if we just take a look at the past month, April 2024 in China, here we see the Model Y has sold over 26,000 units. And if we look at the competitors in the midsize electric SUV category here, still none can hold a candle to the Model Y. So why will the ONVO L60, which launches in September, why will that be able to do what others have failed to do so far? Well, if we're being honest here, I don't necessarily actually genuinely think that the ONVO L60 will topple the Model Y in terms of total sales numbers. Not necessarily, but we'll talk more about that. But if it does beat the Model Y, I also don't think it's going to solely be because of the ONVO L60. And let me tell you what I mean. Tesla's been, let's say, doing some self-inflicted wounds here recently. Not just in China, but globally, I think. So first, we'll talk about the Model 3 Highland, the refresh of the Model 3. In my opinion, it's been a pretty big disaster for Tesla in China. Now, Tesla Model 3 used to absolutely be the go-to #1 EV. You would see it all over Shanghai, all over the roads in China. You would see the Model 3 everywhere. That was, before the Model Y came out, or the first year or two of the Model Y even. For many people, the Model 3 was seen as a cool, trendy, achievable, or in some cases aspirational product to get. High-tech, enthusiasts loved it, laymen loved it. Everybody really liked the Model 3. It was a great product for its time. Now, last year, the Model 3 refresh launched in China. I think it was October. I went to a store in Shenzhen, and I took a look at it. And in that video, I mentioned that I thought it was, not a good refresh for China. I said, probably it will launch to some pretty good sales numbers to Tesla fans, and then it will die down pretty quickly. And I feel like I've been pretty well vindicated by that prediction, even though a lot of Tesla fans in the comments were saying I was wrong and the refresh was great. It was fine, but compared to what the competition is putting out in China in terms of price, in terms of specifications, in terms of features, all the stuff that, when you're walking through a mall and you see store after store after store of retail shops for cars, and you go and look at this car compared to this car just sitting in it, the Model 3 looks very bare bones, looks very cheap, let's be honest. Even if the price is quite a bit higher than, some of the competitors. Like you look at the Zeekr 007 that just recently launched, which looks beautiful. If you look at the SU7 from Xiaomi, which has already surpassed the Model 3 in sales in the past month, well, I think my prediction again was pretty well spot on. Now, people are saying that the Model Y has a refresh coming, and I've seen rumors that the Model Y refresh is very similar to the Model 3 refresh. I've seen rumors that say after the kind of failure of the Model 3 refresh in China, they're kind of rethinking what the Model Y refresh will be. Maybe globally or maybe just in this country. I'm not sure. I know for a fact that most people will expect a car that costs 250,000 RMB in China to have things like a heads-up display or have things like a digital instrument cluster at least. They will expect, probably for 250,000, probably massage seats, probably a lot of stuff that, generally speaking, Tesla kind of skimps out on. Even they expect stocks for your indicators, right? You could, of course, quite easily argue that the Model 3 has made some pretty good improvements in their refresh. Like the cabin noise is a lot less, the suspension is better, those sorts of things. But again, when you're walking through the mall and you see like a Zeekr or you see a Xiaomi or you see a Neo ET5, it's very clear at this price point which one you're going to choose. And it's probably not going to be the Model 3 unless you really want the Tesla badge or you're not cross shopping. And for real, the numbers do not lie. During the past 6 months, basically the time from the refreshed Model 3 to now, the Model Y is the best selling car in China in terms of this price point, and the Model 3 is second best selling car. Model Y is quite a bit farther ahead. Anyway, in the past 1 month, let's say just April, I know it's not a good indicator of trends, but let's just look at the past month in April. The Model 3 was number 9. It's already trailing the brand new Xiaomi SU7, which is only just starting to ramp up their sales. It's even trailing the Neo ES6, which is a much more expensive car, and it's being doubled. It's being lapped by the Zeekr 001, which is also a little bit more expensive starting price, and it's a little bit bigger, but it's a competitor. Really, you're going to cross shop at Model 3 and a Zeekr 001, and the Zeekr 001 is already doubling the Model 3. So the Model 3 will definitely not be the number 2 best-selling car in the forward 6 months. I guarantee that. If the Model Y refresh, which is rumored, if it's similar to the Model 3 refresh at all, which means not really improved from a visual standpoint, from an obvious standpoint, it's going to also probably see significant decline in sales in the coming few years. Again, just like the Model 3, when it does launch, I'm sure it'll have great sales, but it will probably taper off relatively quickly. So those are self-inflicted wounds that I think Tesla's done. They've done a lot more, but I think some of the Musk stuff in China is not really quite as something that people care about here. They probably don't really know what Musk is saying, or they don't use Twitter. They don't really care about any of that stuff. So that has less of an impact, but the actual products that Tesla is putting out here, I do think that has a pretty negative impact on their sales here in China. So those self-inflicted wounds, though, they don't really have anything to do with the ONVO L60. So I guess what we got to do is we got to take a look at that product as well and see why it may or may not be able to actually dethrone the Model Y. I think that every single car on the market competes in some capacity. Of course, if you're shopping for a Wuling Mini or a car that costs 70,000 RMB, you're probably not cross-shopping with a car that costs 250,000 or 200,000 RMB. So first, I want to kind of eliminate most of the cars on the market. What I really want to do is just kind of focus on the mid-size SUV, the crossover SUV type of vehicle, pure electric, non-hybrid, non-internal combustion. There have already been a few Model Y killers that I've talked about. We're not going to go through each and every one and why they failed or why they are currently failing or why their sales volumes are just so. There's too many of them, and probably it's not that interesting. But overall, I would say pretty much every single car that has been a Model Y killer has had some sort of quirk or some sort of design flaw or just some sort of weird thing about it that has kind of nipped its sales in the bud. For all the things that you could say about the Model Y, overall, generally speaking, it's a car with broad appeal. It looks nice enough. It doesn't have anything that's overly negative about it, overly ugly, overly weird design language. It's functional, has a lot of space. It has most of the things that a family car would need in the year 2024. Because of that, that's why it is still the undisputed king, even though the G6 from XPeng maybe chips away 2,000 cars every single month. 2,000 people buy a G6. Every single month, 6,000 people buy an ES6. So because all these cars have some sort of flaw or some sort of quirk or something wrong with them to some capacity, it means none of them can really go and overtake Tesla Model Y. Not only do they have probably some sort of quirk or problem, design issue, they also don't have the name Tesla, which again is kind of synonymous with electric cars, even in China. It's still a aspirational brand, still a badge that people want. So let's look at the closest product that NIO currently offers to the Model Y, and that would be the ES6 and the EC6. They're basically the same car, just slightly different shape. For the last month, April, they sold about 8,000 cars, about 8,000 ES6s and EC6s, which is, about 30% of what Tesla sold, which is 24,000 Model Ys. And so if we look at the midsize SUV, the ES6 EC6 is actually number 2 selling car in the market last month, only trailing the Model Y. Okay, so what does that have to do with the ONVO L60? So to me, it indicates that people want a high quality midsize SUV competitor to the Model Y, and probably more importantly, that they want the ability to do battery swap. They want all of the things probably that NIO offers. If they didn't, there's other midsize SUVs, many of which, or probably all of which, are actually cheaper than the NIO, and those other SUVs would be selling in higher quantities than the NIO. So if, for example, the NIO ES6 was the same price as the Model Y, then I'd venture a guess that the NIO would take at least some of the sales from the Model Y, if not a lot of them. I can't say how many, obviously, but it would probably be significant. So what does NIO do? They launched the ONVO, which is relatively similar to a NIO, but a much lower price point, right? And it has battery swap. It has some of the features that people want. So of course, again, I cannot tell you how many people are going to choose a ONVO over a Model Y if they go cross-shopping. Impossible to tell you. But again, I think it will be a significant number of people who will opt for the ONVO. One thing that indicates that to me is people now are cross-shopping sedans, right? Model 3 versus, again, a Xiaomi SU7. What are they choosing? The Xiaomi. Similar price, similar specs, more features, better quality, probably in the Xiaomi. So ultimately, will the ONVO L60, will it sell 15, 20,000 units a month? And by its own very nature of being a direct competitor with the Model Y, take 10 or 15,000 a month from the Model Y? I don't know. Impossible again for me to say. We're going to have to see how it all plays out. Additionally, there's going to be lots of other models that come on the market. The Chinese market moves so fast. There's probably going to be a Xiaomi SUV as well that competes with the Model Y and the ONVO. There's going to be a lot of competition that comes out. I do think, at least when the ONVO first launches and they start ramping up sales, just like the Model 3 refresh, you're going to see a lot of sales initially. It's going to ramp up and do a peak in the first, probably 3-4 months. And then after that, if the product is good, if it's very appealing to people, high quality, has good reviews, then people will continue to buy it and it will continue to sell well. And it may eventually average to start selling more than the Model Y, especially if there is no Model Y refresh in the next 6 or 12 months, or if the Model Y refresh is underwhelming. So even though there will be a lot of other competitors, and there already are a lot of competitors in the Model Y category that have failed, I think the biggest advantage that NIO has, or ONVO probably will have as well, is that they actually do really, really focus on design. They focus on something that's broadly appealing, high quality materials, good design, humanistic, and personally I think they do very well with that. Again, I think some other brands have some weird quirks, some issues with their design, or they're just trying to be different. But I think ONVO, based on what we've seen so far, from the brand, from the language that they use, from what they showed at their conference, that there are going to be a product that is designed for family, designed to be broadly appealing to the dad, to the mom, to the children, to the grandma. And it's going to be a product that most people can, understand, come to grips with, and use without too much of a hassle. So with all that being said, what do I actually think is the biggest difficulty that ONVO might face? I've said it before, I'm saying it again. I think battery as a service on a cheaper product, a more affordable product, is a tougher sell. For example, if you buy a NIO ET9, which is going to start at 800,000 RMB, and then you pay 1,000 or 1,500 RMB a month for battery as a service, that's a very, very small percentage of the total amount of the car, right? Plus, a person who's buying a car that costs 800,000 is a very different consumer from a person who's buying a car like an ONVO L60 for 170,000 with battery as a service. So if I buy a car that's 170,000 with battery as a service, and now I have to pay 600 or 700 RMB a month for my battery, plus, I have to repay my car loan over the next 5 years or whatever, plus interest, all that stuff. The battery as a service is a much higher percentage of the total amount of the sale price of the car. So I think it's a more difficult sale. When you're kind of shopping, you're that person who, economically, you can afford the car maybe, and you're working out the numbers, and then you start cross-shopping, you look at maybe a Model 3 or maybe a Model Y competitor like a Xpeng G6, for example, and maybe that car only costs 200,000 or 210,000, but there is no battery as a service fee, right? Well, it might just make more sense. You're less vulnerable to the more, economic realities, the macro environment. It might just be easier to just buy a car outright and not have to rent a battery. So I do think that is a potential headwind for NIO and for ONVO as they move down market and still try to rent batteries to people, but we shall see. What do you guys think? Do you guys agree or disagree? How do you like the trailer for the film that I created? Let me know in the comments. And finally, there's a lot more that we can discuss about ONVO, which we do discuss about ONVO and about NIO on our weekly podcast, Blue Sky Coming. That is on our channel, Blue Sky Coming. I'll put a link in the description. That's with Mr. P and TIY by Ting. And we do that every week live on YouTube and then upload later to Apple Podcast. So go subscribe to that. Check it out if you want more information about NIO, about ONVO, about auto market in China. We have fun discussing every single week. So bye-bye. Thanks for watching. Peace out. Stay live. Stay healthy. Stay safe. Peace out.